whatever.
Okay. Welcome to the FederationX podcast and video series. It's great to see you again.
Good to be here.
Yes. Hello. All right, so back to our topic. What this new Israeli government is doing, right, is they're trying to deflect what they're doing within Israel and create chaos between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
I'm not even sure that's their main concern. I think what they're doing with the Palestinians is a separate track. It happens to work very nicely by helping to deflect the attention from what they're doing otherwise. But I think that they would do that regardless, even if they wouldn't at the same time trying to change the country into a dictatorship, right, which is what they're doing.
So.
Totalitarian regime.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other issue, and back to, I forgot what Francesca's surname is. It's the same surname as our Australian.
Albanese, I think. I think Albanese.
Yeah. So the view that I formed from listening to that audio was that Israelis really obviously value their security, even their perceived security and their lifestyle. And if they felt in any way that that was going to be jeopardized, then they would increase oppression, increase apartheid. They don't care. The main thing is their perceived security and their lifestyle. Now, surely the new government would be taking advantage of that.
Israelis will tell you what life was like before the separation wall was built and what it's like now, and they'll invoke the Second Intifada and say, we used to have buses blowing up all over Israel, and as soon as we put the wall up, it stopped terrorism completely. And I get a sense, just a vague sense, that a lot of Palestinians are out to upset that rhetoric.
I think that quite a few Israelis are aware of the fact that this cannot continue. So I think they understand that just lashing out like the government is now doing, just basically blindly lashing out, trying to create havoc is not going to help. Okay, and the media also are supportive of that narrative. The media is clearly seem to report that what the government is doing is not helping. So I think, and since there'll be I think there shortly will be a strong reaction. This isn't going to reflect well on the government. The government won't be in a good situation.
So let's assume the impetus of the current surge of violence is the insurgents into Jenin. Would that be a fair assumption that the military going into Jenin, killing 10? So some places say 9, some say 10. I'm not sure what the number is, but killing 10 Palestinians or 9 Palestinians in Jenin caused the current rise in instability. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes. What happened in Jenin definitely contributed in a major way, because there was like 2 weeks before there were 5 people killed in Jenin. So it's not it's not like a one-off.
Yeah,
it's a more than one.
I read in an article somewhere that the murderer, the guy that killed the 7 Israelis in the Israeli settlement. Mm-hmm. Was affected, and all his family were killed in 2015 by another Israeli in
his grandfather was killed by an Israeli settler in several years ago, and there's a family connection there, and that at the rate that we have been going in the occupation for 55 years, there's very likely going to be people involved in previous violence. It's just impossible to to avoid it for such a long.
And they're looking for revenge, right?
They're looking for revenge, and when something comes up, an opportunity comes up, or an instance comes up, some event which drives them angry, makes them angry, and there's plenty of those.
Yeah.
Then it goes wrong. Goes wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the issue for me is that, and I keep repeating it, it doesn't matter if it's a left-leaning government, a centrist government, extreme right government. The occupation isn't going to finish. The apartheid isn't going to finish, right? None of it's going to finish. The influence has to come from outside of Israel. And the obvious target is America, right? There's no way Israelis are going to rally together and say, oh, let's finish this apartheid now. It suits them.
First of all, outside is some pressure has to come from the outside, but it will not work only from pressure from the outside. Okay, pressure from the outside can only be supportive, and it has to be managed very, very carefully. Because when you put too much pressure on us, we'll say, no, we're not going to do what you tell us to do. Okay, we'll be, in spite of whatever you're trying to force us to do, we know what's good for us, and we'll do what's good for us, and we'll continue to do what's good for us. And it's worked for 55 years; it'll work for another 55 years. Okay,
yes.
So whatever pressure has to be applied from the outside has to be applied with a lot of thought, and it's possible to do that.
Yeah, look, no question. I don't think gently is going to do it. I think eventually it's going to be a lot of heavy pressure.
Not gently, but not overt. What I'm saying is not splash it all over the paper. But when Netanyahu goes to ask for some gadget or for something, the U.S. government is going to say, "Sorry, guys, not this time." Okay, or a special loan facility or something like that. Things which can be done subtly behind the scenes and are not overt pressure.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, Manuel, the biggest lever the U.S. has is the $3.9 billion it gives to Israel every year in military aid.
Okay.
And if it took that away or put conditions on it, what the effect would be from Israel?
First of all, there are conditions on it all the time. Okay, there are conditions all the time, and they can be ratcheted up. But in terms of cutting it off, that's a big problem, because what they are basically they are a subsidy to the U.S. industries. Okay, they don't give us $3.9 billion. They give $3.9 billion.
Credit.
They give a credit line in the United States to shop for $3.9 billion.
Yeah, in the shop.
So
in the weapons shop.
Your other issue, guys, is the strength of the evangelical movement, which is really Christian Zionism in the US.
Yes.
It's not, as we've been identifying in our meetings, right? It's
Yeah.
not APAC or J Street or whatever, right? They might be loud voices.
It's not only them. No, it's also the evangelicals.
Your main issue is American Zionism, or if you like, Christian Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
So the push from America really has to come from the American Jewish community.
Yes, I agree. Although I must say that lately, also evangelists, especially the younger ones, don't buy that pro-Israel at all cost line. They also feel sympathetic to the Palestinian narrative and the need for equal rights. So this is I think the evangelist support is going down. Okay, all support for Israel is going down outside of Israel.
Is that just limited to this government? The minute you have a change of government,
well, they're always try to look for reasons why they can support Israel. Okay, so if the government, but this government is, may drive it home that something has to be done. Okay, that they may just understand that that whatever comes afterwards, it won't be the same situation. Okay, because
Israel's the emperor's got no clothes syndrome for the West. The American government says no. Israel shares values with the US and it has a right to defend itself. And so that's the same tune every other country sings. And that's the same tune that the population that really Israel's too far away. So they just buy that tune as well. So that's the common Western belief that Israel, even if you're not an evangelical Christian, even if you're not a Jewish American, there's a lot out there. There's a whole a very large minority that also believe just the news grabs. Israel's got a right to defend itself. Everyone's still in favor of a two-state solution for two people. So the consequence of that is that most of the messages that you're trying to talk about don't get out past the Jewish community and the Palestinian community in the diaspora.
But defend itself against who? Right? Since the Abraham Accords, all the Arab nations have basically shook hands with Israel and said, we're your friends.
Yep.
Right? The Palestinians are occupied and unarmed, right?
No, they're not. They're obviously the reference is to the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are not unarmed. They're armed.
Yeah, they're armed. They've got a knife and a little Katusha rocket.
No. Again, perceived security. Okay, if personal, no, it's not something to laugh at because people no, it's if you live in the West Bank and you can't go jogging because you have to be afraid that somebody comes and slices you up, then that's perceived. Say again?
Stones can be dangerous. Israelis keep telling me. Stones can be dangerous weapons.
Yeah. No, it's a perception of the personal security. Okay, and obviously it's played up. Okay, obviously the Palestinians are no match for the Israeli army, but they are a match for Israel's perception of security, which is what's the army can't use all its power in the West Bank.
I'm going to try to put an analogy here, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
A school bully in school, right? Mm-hmm. Bullying a little kid, bashing him every day.
Yeah.
So the little kid kicks the bully in the shins, right? Mm-hmm. Even though the kid ends up with a bloody nose, the school bully comes with the school principal and the vice principal and a whole gang against the little kid. That's really the fight here, is it not?
That's pretty much the situation. Although unfortunately, it's a lot more people get killed than in your school analogy. Okay,
yes,
that's
one
is
the bully.
No.
Is the bully?
We are the bullies. We are the bullies, and we're making sure everybody understands we stay bullies because what's the government?
We can assume the United States and the United Kingdom and Germany and everybody else are the school teachers and the school principal, and they're all supporting the bully.
I think they're becoming more and more reluctant to do that. Okay, there's a lot of you don't hear a lot anymore. You used to hear support of Israel, but you hear a lot less support and more criticism. And
have you seen the Al Jazeera documentaries on the lobby?
I saw some parts of it. Yeah, I don't think I saw the whole thing.
They did one on the UK and one on the US, like the
I remember. Actually, I know the guy who was in the one in the UK.
The diplomat.
Yeah, the diplomat. Yeah, I know him personally.
Okay. What's really interesting is they were both very damning. If it was anybody else other than Israel, and there was no blowback. I heard nothing in the news. I know that the US tried to stop the video appearing within the US.
Yeah.
I think they put pressure on Britain to do the same, but Britain let the lobby go through.
Let the lobby go through, yeah.
Yeah. And then a few years later, maybe 1 or 2 years later, Coburn gets taken down, right?
Yeah.
The whole Labour Party gets taken down for anti-Semitism.
But that was not, I don't, that was, I read the reports on the head of the Labour Party, the former head of the Labour Party, and he was off his rocker. The guy was off his rocker. He was tone deaf. Okay, I don't think he's an anti-Semite. Okay, I don't think he's an anti-Semite, but he was completely tone deaf to what was happening in his party. Okay, so
and a lot of the people that are accused, or sorry, not a lot. Al Jazeera did a special on this, and some of the people that are accusing of anti-Semitism in the British Labour Party were actually Jewish.
Well, the fact that you're Jewish doesn't necessarily mean you're an anti-Semite. You can't. The fact that you're Jewish doesn't prevent you from being anti-Semitic. But it happens.
Yeah,
it's rare.
but it's rare, absolutely. I mean, look, it's this. If there's a conflict of interest, I mean, and there certainly is. If you're Jewish and you're speaking out against something your whole culture is supporting, then it is not in your interest to speak out. So the only reason you're doing it is moral. Like you've got a moral conviction to speak out.
Well, the issue is that it's a confluation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Okay, it goes into anti-Zionism. It's very, very difficult to be an anti-Zionist without not being called an anti-Semite. Okay. Yeah, and obviously there is a difference, and obviously you can be an anti-Zionist and you don't have to be an anti-Semite. Although I think there are many
anti-Semite and be pro-Zionist.
Yeah, the danger.
Yes, that's true.
The danger there, right? And we need to separate anti-Semitism, right? Which to me is racism, right?
Racism, yeah, it's racism.
From anti-Zionism, and it's really not in Jewish interest to convolute the two, because a lot of people view Zionism as racism.
Israel certainly thinks that it's our interest to make those two go together.
Where the danger becomes is if you say no, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and I believe Zionism is racism, then anti-Semitism is not racist anymore.
No, I understand. I understand the difficulty, but it's a subject that I don't have any problems with it. I don't have an issue, but I know my country does, and a lot of people in Israel have difficulty looking at this in a sober way. Okay, this is an emotional issue. Okay. So if you're an anti-Zionist and there are 7 million or 6 million Zionists, okay, you must be an anti-Semite as well, okay? If it's against half the Jewish people, then it can't not be against the other half.
I certainly don't want to be racist towards Israelis or Jews as much as I don't want them to be racist against Palestinians, right?
Yeah.
So it's high on my agenda to avoid. You're forcing it on yourselves.
To speak to that, Iyad, one of the other conflated terms is the Israel-Arab conflict, right? And Israelis hate to use the word Palestinian. And there is a lot of value in conflating Palestinians with Arabs with Muslims. Yeah. Up until recently, when the Abraham Accord started to go.
Sure, it's very much easier to have a neat term for your enemy. Okay, if you have to start differentiating, it gets complicated, and who wants complications?
and unfortunately, the Iranians are not Arabs, but that doesn't matter. They're Muslims, so that works.
Yeah, it works too. Yeah. No, we're in really bad times. I think this is going to blow. It's going to blow sooner rather than later if this government stays. but there are a few hitches for the government now that the government has to overcome. Like the Attorney General just called Netanyahu to tell him to stay off dealing with the legal system as long as he's in court, which sounds reasonable. And we don't know how, whether he's going to look for a fight there or whether the Attorney General is going to take him off his job, which is
so. Does the Attorney General have the power to take him off his job?
The Attorney General can tell him what to do. The question is, if he says, "I don't give a damn," okay, what is going to happen? She can call the cops and tell the cops to please remove him from his office. And the question is whether the cops will do that, being under the new Minister of the National Security. So it's obviously a part of the constitutional problem that Israel is in right now. Okay, there are legal.
The president,
yeah, go ahead.
Take it down? Has he got is more power than the Attorney General?
No, the president has basically he has moral power if he was a very moral person, which he isn't. So he has one or two shots in his gun, okay, and yeah. he just he doesn't intend to use it. Okay, he said that. All right, he said he's trying to maneuver, and he's trying to mediate, and he's trying to get a compromise and everything. He doesn't need to do that. He needs to shoot. Okay, he needs to go out and say the guy has to leave his position right now or something like that. So make a major impact, but he's not going to do that because that's who he is.
The seat can the seat of president sack the prime minister?
No, I don't think there's such a provision for the president to sack anybody. I think the only thing that can happen is that the Attorney General calls on the prime minister to remove himself from office temporarily in order to avoid conflict of interest. And the prime minister can then call on the Supreme Court and ask, convince the Supreme Court that this is not a good reason for him to do that, and hope he gets away with it, which is I don't think he will. This time I don't think he will.
So
that's interesting. Just on a side note, when we were looking at becoming a republic, the Attorney General's office was going to become the presidency. And that was probably the only minor change in the whole political system. Our Attorney General had the power to sack the Prime Minister, which he did in 1974.
Yeah, it's only been used once, right? And I think what Emmanuel's saying is the Israeli Attorney General has that same power.
No, he has I don't think he has the power to remove him. Actually, she can call on him to remove himself. I don't think she can actually affect that, although I don't know. Conceivably, let's say if she calls on him to remove himself from office and he doesn't, she may have something else up her sleeve, okay? But this is all within the framework of the constitutional crisis because he obviously doesn't listen to what she has to say, okay? And so this will be very interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. I fear that before the world really acts, there's got to be a lot of bloodshed.
I'm afraid you may be right. I hope it won't be that much, but the potential is definitely there. I mean, we know we've had 2 intifadas, and the second one was terrible for both sides, and I just don't know how that's going to come. What's going to happen now?
It's going to be terrible for both sides. I don't see that.
Well,
the Palestinians have made it politically, they're not going to take
It's-
it like that.
No, but the oppression is much more pervasive now. It's not
absolutely.
in terms of our capabilities. They are much more developed compared to in the first and second Intifada. So that can cut both ways. It can mean that it's going to be much easier to suppress the whatever Intifada, or it can mean there's going to be a lot more casualties. But either way, it's going to be a lot worse for the Palestinians than it's going to be for
maybe
us.
100 to 1 or something.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know. I don't want to.
So the other thing, so question: are there any ways, first of all, to influence the level of bloodshed, and second of all, to potentially influence the outcome so that the outcome ends as a more safe, peaceful, equitable solution?
Look,
Well,
I think the only, or not the only, that's not really right. Influence can come from any angle. But the strongest influence is for moderate American Jewish voices, groups, etc., to come together and start influencing American policy towards Israel to bring a resolution. Right?
I don't think that's going to happen. I think the American government is going to react before the Jewish groups get their act together. I think one of the problems with the Jewish community is that they're definitely afraid of being viewed as cooperating with the enemy against Israel. Okay, so I think the U.S. government is much more concerned about what's happening here, or it's easier for it to act. And what the U.S. government can do is can simply say, no, you don't use U.S. weapons for anything, or something like that. They can call that, okay, which will make it very difficult for Israel to operate.
Yeah. Although Blinken didn't certainly step up.
No, he didn't say it.
And he actually, from what I could gather from the news reports, he very only just touched on the current crisis.
Well, we don't know what he told Netanyahu in private.
We don't. But just from what I've heard from reports, is that they didn't talk much about the current crisis. Instead, they talked about Iran and they talked about the Middle East.
I think both sides have an interest to make it sound as if that's the case. I think much more was discussed about the current crisis and also reflected in some of the open comments by Blinken, and also by the fact that he met with people from civil society. Okay, which is exceptional. It doesn't usually happen when a Secretary of State comes on a visit.
You're right. And if he certainly didn't talk about it, he conveyed it when he spoke on camera.
He did.
But Netanyahu ignored it completely. When he spoke, it sounded a lot like the time when he was talking to Obama about trying to educate him on the it sounded like I'm just going to not listen to what you say, and I've got my own line to promote, and that's all I'm going to do.
Netanyahu needs somebody tough to speak to him, but the Americans have a way of passing the message, even if it may not sound like that, if they want to, and I hope they want to, because there's very little else that can move us at this time.
Yeah,
it's such a sad situation.
It's looking that way, and I mean we've discussed once before is if America, for example, does shun Israel, will Israel run to Russia, for example?
Not now.
It won't happen.
It's not. We made one strategic switch in 1967 from France to the US.
Yeah.
Okay, that was one thing, and it was the best thing we ever did. I don't see any way that we could move to Russia. Definitely not now. Russia is going down. Okay, so I don't think there's no real alternative to the United States at this time, and I don't think.
Again, I get a sense that the Israeli leaders don't want the US to be too comfortable. I've heard terms like we are, we're 100% behind them, but we don't think they're 100% behind us. I've heard terms like, we need to not be so reliant on American aid.
It's been like that that's been a sentiment which I've heard 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the support only has gone up since then.
Yeah, I know, but I think that there's an element of saying it for the cameras for America's sake, to try to not make America feel too comfortable with potentially Israel going to Russia or China.
I think the Americans know where they're at in reality. They know where they're at.
I'm not saying it's working.
No,
but I'm saying I think that there is a play there.
Okay, we try to get away with it, but we don't. In the end, we never do.
Oh, you do with the UK. You do it very well with the UK.
With the UK, well, the UK is going down. I mean, they're in real trouble.
They are, aren't they?
They're in real trouble.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like us, in a way, except our economy for the time being is still going strong, but I don't think that's going to stay that way for long if we keep up on that on this dictatorial strait we're on.
Also, when will we hear about this judicial crisis that's going on? It's
any day. Every day is a new thing. It's amazing. Every day. And yesterday they came up with trying to make it impossible to strike, for workers to strike. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is like it's like a law which is trying to help that legal revolution, because if they can't go on strike, they cannot stop the legal revolution. Okay. So this legal process is bringing new things, and they're becoming much more problematic for the public, and also much more difficult for the government to sell. Okay, even in the coalition, there are people say, hey, wait a second, where is this going?
So is it subject to drafting? Sorry, Lee, just give me 1 second. I just need to understand. So is it subject to drafting some new acts and then being passed through Parliament?
Yeah, they have to draft the law, and then they have to vote on it. Now, the moment they start talking about it, you start getting everybody chipping in and say, hey, what's going on? Okay, this law about the forbidding strikes is like really, really, really tough. Okay, so people, even members of the coalition say, hey, what's going on here? Obviously, this is not what they had in mind originally. So. And now what's happening with the Attorney General and Netanyahu is also new. Okay, I mean, she said it. She went out today and she said he cannot continue working on the legal reform as long as he's in his position, because he is in court. Okay.
Yeah, but so that doesn't mean that the rest of Parliament can't keep working on it.
No, that's true. That's true, but it
doesn't mean he can't read the papers.
No,
might sign off on them and send them.
No, but the crisis, the feeling of crisis is becoming much more evident all the time. So it does have an impact. What happens in the end? Theoretically, they can pass the law. Okay. Yeah. I don't think it'll happen. I just don't think it'll happen. There are people there are people who said that they're going to use weapons to prevent it from happening already.
Is that right?
On record, yeah. Okay. So yep, we want to take that lying down.
Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Lee. Go ahead, mate. I just needed to understand.
I was just making a joke that I can't even remember what we were talking about. I'm sorry.
I think we've exhausted this one now, Rebecca.
Okay, so thank you for watching.
All right. Take care. Hope to be back soon.
See you soon.
All right.
See you soon.
Yeah. All right.
Bye. Get a
Bye-bye.
good night rest.